Hello, my name is Sam from Libanus Church, and I'm sure by now many of us have seen the awful images or heard the reports of the tragic events that are currently happening in Afghanistan. And with everything that's happening, the terror and fear that is gripping the nation, the deaths, the imprisonments, the beatings, with all the awful things happening in that nation, I want us to think about the Christian response. How can we as Christians respond and react to such violence and brutality? I also want this video to help us to inform the church of what you can be praying for, of what you can be praying that God will do, and how God can help to sustain his people in Afghanistan. The reality is thousands of people have been displaced from their homes. As of May 21, about 100,000 people have been forced out of their houses because of conflict this year alone. However, unfortunately, since then, that number has been thought to have doubled. That's almost 2,000 people who have had to leave their homes because it's unsafe, who've had to leave everything behind because it's too dangerous for them to stay. At Libanus Church, we have a number of refugees in our church, and we've had a number throughout many years. And we know what they had to do. We know the cost for them to leave everything to get to somewhere safe. And for Christians living in Afghanistan, the situation is only worse. And it's only getting more dangerous. One secret Christian who living in Afghanistan said this: "How we survive daily, only God knows. He knows because he has been kind to dwell with us. But we are tired of all the death that is around us. The situation is desperate. And as Christians, we should be a people of peace. We should not just be a people who empathize for the people living in Afghanistan, but as Christians, we should know that all life, that every person is made in the image of God. We should know that God made us to have lives of dignity, lives of respect. And in the midst of this great suffering, our ultimate example is the person of Jesus Christ. For we know that Jesus, God himself, suffered. And so when we pray to God, when we ask God to intervene, when we ask God to be involved in this situation, we are praying to a God who knows what suffering is. We are praying to a God who has suffered himself. We are praying to Jesus who knows great suffering. And though it is tragic, I love what that Afghan Christian said, that even in this dark, uncertain times, even as they can see death piling up around them, they know that God was kind enough to dwell with them. This reminds me of Matthew chapter 1 and verse 23, which says, "And you are to give him the name Emmanuel," which means God with us. Even in the middle of this great suffering, even in the middle of this human chaos, our great prayer is that God would be with his people. God would be strengthening them. God would be looking after them. God would be caring for his people. As individuals, if you want to offer help, please do get in contact with your local council or charities to see what you can do to practically help. But the one thing that we can do as Christians is pray to a God who listens. And the great Christian organisation Open Doors has provided 5 prayer points for Christians to be thinking about and praying about as the situation in Afghanistan continues to get worse and worse. Number 1, pray for the small group of believers in the country. There's not many Christians in Afghanistan, but those who are deeply oppressed and deeply worried about the incoming Taliban regime. Pray for the believers in the country that God will be with them, that God would strengthen them. Pray for the leaders, that they would give good wisdom and advice to the church. Pray that a lot of the Christian churches, the secret churches, would not be discovered by the government. Pray for the believers in Afghanistan. The second thing is to pray for the displaced. Pray for those who have had to leave everything behind. Pray for those who have left their family, their friends, their houses. Those who might feel completely lost and isolated. Remember them. The third thing we can pray for is the women. Women in Afghanistan are facing unprecedented levels of fear. Having opportunities and freedoms that they've enjoyed for many decades might be stripped away from them. Please do pray for all of the women in Afghanistan. There are so many horrible reports of how the Taliban are targeting women and young women, children even. Please pray for the women in Afghanistan. The fourth prayer request is to pray for those who are sick. COVID-19 hasn't stopped and is still raging in Afghanistan. There are many who are lame or injured who maybe can't leave or can't flee because they are trapped by their illness. Imagine living in a country where war is taking place, where hospitals might not be as safe as they used to be. Those who are ill, those who are sick, really do need the prayers of God's people. And the fifth point that Open Doors encourages us to pray for is that pray that the country would not become a haven for extremists. For many years, Afghanistan used to be a place where terrorists and other groups were able to dwell, and quite peacefully and amicably, that terrorist groups were allowed to just be in the country. And if Afghanistan becomes a haven for other extremist groups, then that increases the danger for Christians and other citizens and civilians. Pray that these wicked and evil people are not able to congregate and feel safe in Afghanistan. But one other prayer request that I would add to those from Open Doors. Number 6, pray for salvation. Pray that in the middle of this dark and difficult day, pray that God would save. Pray that as people see the horror that is happening around, pray that God would intervene and save people. Well, if you want more information, or if you want a written list of these prayer requests, please go to libanuschurch.com, and under our news section, what we've done is we've written out a lot of this information so that you can pray in an informed way for Afghanistan. The situation is terrible. There are so many people suffering, and I urge you, as Christians, as the Church of Jesus Christ, I urge you, pray for Afghanistan.